was a priest in Dublin who was trying to explain the difference between this life and the life to come by talking about the dragonfly. At the bottom of the pond, there were these little grubs crawling all about. And they started wondering what happened to their members when the members would climb up the lily pads and go up to the top and never come back. I wonder what it's like up there, they used to ask one another. I wonder what happens. Well, they agreed amongst themselves that the next one who was called to the surface would come back, and that next little grub that found itself drawn to the surface by nature crawled up the stem and out onto the surface of that lily leaf. It was really bright up there. It had been really dark and murky down below. And he thought, well, his brother grubs and sister grubs are going to have no idea what this is like. And so something then began to happen to him. He began to open outwards, and he began to spread out two beautiful colored wings and became this beautiful dragonfly, and never could have imagined that this would have happened. It thought that it would have remained a grub forever. And then it flew back and forth across the pond, and it could see down into the murkiness and see those grubs down below, but they could not see it. And it realized that there was no way it could get back, and they wouldn't even recognize such a beautiful creature as ever having been one of their own. See, during the resurrection, something completely new happens to us. We are not resuscitated, where the old bodies come back to life in the way that we think of them. We are resurrected. I mean, that's the reason there was so much confusion when Jesus first appeared to people after his resurrection. You know, in that gospel reading where Mary Magdalene goes to the tomb, she thought that Jesus was the gardener. She didn't recognize him at first until she heard him say her name. In that story of the road to Emmaus, Jesus walked and talked with people, and they didn't get that it was him until they broke bread, had Holy Communion, essentially. Why did they not recognize Jesus? It's not because he stopped being himself. It's because, like the grub transforming into the dragonfly, he took on something new. We also take on something new in our resurrections. So when we're asked the question, when we get to heaven, will we still be ourselves? The answer really is, when we are in heaven, we will be more ourselves than we are right now. Our full potential will be reached. One might say that after we're resurrected, after we're in those glorified spiritual bodies that we heard about in that reading, that, in that place where we never experience pain or sadness or death, that we're actually going to be even more real than we are now. I mean, consider what happened to the people around Jesus when he was walking the earth. Jesus brought the kingdom of God with himself. And so by looking at what happened, we can get a glimpse of that more realness of heaven. What physically happened to people around Jesus? The blind were able to see. The disabled were able to walk. The leper was cleansed and healed and allowed to reintegrate into society. The mentally ill found peace and wholeness. The mute were freed to speak. There's a pattern here. People remained themselves, but they became more fully themselves. Jesus didn't condemn them for their difficulties. He did not condemn them for their disabilities. He didn't cast them aside as the leaders were doing to those people at the time. Instead, he looked at them as the children of God whom they were. And he healed them and restored them to wholeness. He brought them salvation. I mean, salvation, that's what that really even means when we talk about salvation. Salvation and the word salve even come from the same root words, because it's about being restored to wholeness. So when as Christians we ask whether a person has been saved, we are asking if they've had that power, if experienced that power of God in Jesus Christ to restore them to wholeness. And of course, that includes spiritual wholeness, being reconciled to God through the gift of Jesus on the cross. Out of curiosity, has anybody here ever been to the grave of Benjamin Franklin? I see one back here. Do you remember the epitaph that was on his grave? I don't know, I'm putting that, of course, right? Yeah, so when he was a young man, he wrote what he wanted, and he wound up carrying all the way to the end. In one of his later moments, Benjamin Franklin, who of course was a printer, Farmer's Almanac, all that stuff, he wrote the following. The body of B. Franklin, printer. Like the cover of an old book, its contents torn out, and stripped of its lettering and gilding, lies here food for words. But the work shall not be wholly lost, for it will, as he believed, appear once more in a new and more perfect edition. That's the idea. Because of Jesus, we will not be lost. We will appear in a new and more perfect edition. We will be more real than we are now. Let's ponder this other story too. When Jesus appeared to his followers in the upper room, we know that the doors were locked because his followers were terrified that they would be killed as well. They were cowering in fear. And in multiple places, we hear that he just appears in the room, even though the doors are locked, and it confused them. In fact, at one point, they even thought that he was a ghost. And sometimes when we hear that story, we might speculate, well, was Jesus walking around kind of like a ghost, or like a mist, or like a mist floating through the walls? But what exactly is happening here? But it's exactly the opposite of a ghost. So when he's coming into the room, it wasn't like he was a mist. It's almost like the other things were moving out of the way for him to get through. It's like the rest of the world was a ghost compared to him. To explain it in a different way, when you see a rock falling through water, as the rock travels through the water, it pushes the water out of the way. It has less space between its compacted atoms, and it pushes the water out, not the other way around. So as we ponder this, and we even ponder that story in there where they say, is he like a ghost? And he's saying quite the opposite. It is quite the opposite. The resurrected Jesus being in a more real state than even the wall would have made it move, like that rock swiftly moving through water. The fact that Jesus later ate with his followers and even had the marks of the wounds of the crucifixion on him show that he was in a very real body and not something ghostly. So it all comes back to the original question in this way. Will we still be who we are in heaven? Yes, and even more so. And so that also means we'll recognize each other in heaven. So of course the next logical question might be this. Okay, we'll recognize each other in heaven, but what if there's people that I don't want to recognize in heaven? And we can think of some of these people, right? The people who hurt us, the people who harmed those we love, the people who right now might give us chills to think about. I mean, we obviously want to recognize our loved ones, but what about those people? There's the good news. Heaven is a place of utmost joy and delight. We will still be ourselves, but that bad stuff on earth will be minimal compared to the joy we experience in heaven. And I do want to be very clear. The pain that we've experienced here is real, and it is wrong. So this is not to diminish that in any way. But God provides us with so much joy that it will more than overwhelm the sadness of earth. Remember, heaven is a place without fear or terror or sadness or tears or sorrow or hunger or death. And if somebody caused us those things on earth, those fear, terror, sadness, sorrow, hunger, death, whatever, it does not follow us there. I'm actually reminded of a few years ago, Newsweek magazine printed a letter from Greenville County, South Carolina. It was from the Department of Social Services. And the letter was written to a deceased person. And it simply said, "To whom it may concern, your food stamps will be stopped effective immediately because we have received notice that you passed away. you may reapply if there is a change in your circumstances. There is a change that will be there in our circumstances, a change for the better. We gain so much that what we no longer experience on earth will be incomparable. I mean, that is, of course, one of the reasons that we do want to always keep our eyes focused on eternity and on the eternal implications of what's happening around us. You know, it's said that about 200 years ago, the tomb of Charlemagne, the great European conqueror, was opened up. And the sight that the workers saw startled them. There was Charlemagne sitting in an upright position, clothed in the most elaborate of kingly garments, with a scepter in a bony hand. And on his knee lay a Bible, and from his other hand was a finger pointing to Mark chapter 8, verse 36, which says, "For what will it profit a person to gain the whole world and yet forfeit the soul?" That's what his last testimony was after conquering much of the world that he knew. But you see, because of Jesus Christ, we do gain our souls. We gain a joy greater than anything this world could provide. We gain living in heaven where we will be more real, more ourselves than we are even right now. Where we will be like that dragonfly who could never have imagined living as a grub.